Good afternoon, welcome back to the lecture. Today the focus of the free exercises that I already uploaded on the portal are discrimination issues and measurement issues. So the free exercises will be focused mostly, not exclusively, but mostly on these topics. The first exercise is the following one. We will quickly read it, comment it, and then you will have some time to do it. After roughly 30 minutes, I will upload the solution so that you can check it and we can comment it quickly, and we go on with the next exercises. Of course, you are free to do them in the order, and if you want to do all of them, you can. But I will follow these steps, and I will present them one by one. So, mortgage application eligibility score. A mortgage is an amount of money loaned to buy a house. Mortgage applications in the USA are automatically analyzed at first by a credit scoring algorithm to determine whether an applicant meets the minimum thresholds necessary to be later considered by a clerk. So first there is an automatic selection. Only after this automatic selection, an officer will manually revise the application. If an application will not is not selected by the automatic step, will be never analyzed by a clerk, so is rejected. The mortgage application eligibility score, MAES, has a maximum of 1,000 points, and the minimum threshold to enter manual review by a clerk is set to 600. So if you don't reach 600, the application doesn't go ahead. And the criteria respective weights used for computing the score are described below. Consider that a negative point for each criterion are not possible. The minimum is always set to 0. So for each criteria, there is some rule, and you know that you cannot go under 0. It is forced to be 0. So there are a total of 5 criteria. The first one is missed payments. It is up to 300 points. This component counts the number of time people got behind on rent. So they couldn't pay a rent, a utilities, and medical bills. Every 3 missed payments and until 9 missed payments, the maximum score is lowered by 30 points. It means that at the 3rd missed payment, your score is decreased by 30. At the 6th, again by 30. At the 9th, again by 30. After the 9th, each missed payment counts for minus 30. So the 10th is minus 30, the 11th is minus 30, and so on. Is this clear? Then loan size and the size of the loan relative to the value of the property the applicants want to buy. So if you ask if the house costs, let's say, $100,000, and you ask for all the $100,000, you get 0 points here. If you ask between 90 and 99%, you get 25 points. If the loan is between 70 and 89%, it's 75 points. Is between 50 and 69 is 150 points, and less than 50%, you take the maximum, that is 200 points. Questions so far? Then current employment status, up to 200 points. According to the following categories, if you are unemployed, 0 points. If you are employed by less than 1 year, 50 points. Between 1 and 4 years, 1 included, 4 excluded, is 100 points. If you are employed between 4 included and 7 years excluded, is 150. And more than 7 years, you get the maximum points, it is 200 points. Amounts owned, I think there are no questions also into this criterion. Okay, amounts owned is up to 200 points. How much you own in a bank account, in bank accounts, relative to the loan size. If you have no bank account or less than 20% of loan size is 0 points. Between 20 and 40%, 50 points, and so on. 100 points, 150, more than 80% of the loan size, so the loan, not the value of the property, you get the maximum points. The last criterion is 100 points worth, and it is the following one. The longer a borrower holds an account at any bank and institute for repaying a debt, so an account that is connected for repaying a debt, and the more points the applicant will get, according to a linear increase between 1 and 50 years. That means every year you get 2 points. You get the maximum for 50 years. This is not my fantasy. This is again, you will find the solution retrieved from a real system. Identify the questions of this exam were to identify at least a measurement issue for each of the 5 indicators. So each indicator, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, has at least a measurement issue. One issue was enough. Okay? And then the second question is on discrimination risk, because the Equal Credit Opportunity Act of 1974 makes it illegal for lenders to discriminate based on race, color, or religion, national origin, sex, marital status, and age. So I ask you to identify only one potential systematic discrimination towards one of these groups, explaining why. Do you have questions on the text? Okay, as usual, my recommendation is to try firstly to do it alone, and then to share and with some colleagues and do it in group. And I will upload the solution in about 20-30 minutes and then comment it. So Hi and Christian are here to, if you have questions, you come to you. For those connected, I will record also the comment to the solution. Okay, I uploaded the solution, and now I quickly comment it. Then you can take your time to check it and ask questions. As usually happens, I take either inspiration or I directly take cases from real life. And the variables that you have seen in the exercise are the variables that are part of the FICO scores used in the United States. Of course, they are a bit simplified and adapted to the content of the course, but they are basically the same. There are some problems with the FICO scores, especially about discriminations, but also about measurement. And even putting on top of FICO scores algorithm, predictive algorithms, the problems are still there. So there is still some issues to be solved in this domain. Here you find some example that we will comment quickly together of measurement issues. I remind you that when I ask for measurement issues, I ask for any issues along the measurement process that we analyzed through the course. About missed payments, I remember that missed payments, every three missed payments, you get a penalty for 3 times. And well, there is no normalization by the amount, the total amount of debts. So, it does not take into account the on-time payments. So you might have missed 3 payments over 3, and you get penalized by 30. You might have missed 3 payments over 3,000. So it's a very small percentage, but you get the same penalty. So it's not a good measure for this. And as I told you in this example, it does not consider the amount of the total number of missed paid, neither the value nor the number. Related to these 2 aspects, you might have missed payments that are, for instance, for repaying a house, but they are very different from missed payments for phone bill, for example, that are usually smaller, and they are easier to recover. So these are examples of measurement issues. Do you have questions? Do you want to check if did you identify others? You want to check them? Okay. Then, loan size. As I told to some of you, the matrix is in percentages. It does not take into account how much you are asking. So if you are penalized because you ask 90% of 10,000 euros or 50,000 euros or dollars, is very different from 90% of $1 million. Okay. Then we have a problem on the borders, because the way it is built, the difference, especially between 89 and 19 and 69 and 70, especially in those borders, you can jump of about 25% of the total score and 40% of the total score, with only a difference of 1%. So if you go from, if you ask 69%, you take 150 points. If you ask 70%, just 1% more, you take 50% less of the points. Then current employment status, it doesn't take into consideration the total amount of employment, only the last employment and for how long it took. So it is very limited as an indicator. As a consequence, it's very sensitive and severe towards temporary unemployment. Again, it was also valid to say that there are some specific border values between intervals that determine a large difference in points that are got. Well, actually, the differences here are the same, are proportional, but again, in 4 years, 3 years and 11 months, you get 100 points, 4 years under 50. Is a bit rough as indicator. Very sensible to just a few changes. Amounts owned is similar to the reflections on the second indicator. You don't have the absolute values. So if you own the 50% of 50,000 euros, is very different if you own the 50% of 1 million euros. So the property and the loan size, actually the loan size is not taken into account the absolute in absolute values. Again, you might also answer again with the reasoning on the border values. It was even if you in 3 indicators, if you picked the border values as an answer was acceptable. Length of credit history is not normalized by age. And so you just have a flat indicator that is a natural cap, because if you are young, you have a kind of cap. You cannot go, if you are 20 years old, you cannot reach the maximum, for example. It should be normalized. And then any other existing bank account is not considered. So only bank accounts that are related to repaying a debt. This was really a minor thing, but it was also possible. Any questions so far? I asked one issue, one measurement issues for each variable, and then I asked one discrimination risk in total. Before that, there is a question.
Even say that having does not imply your status.
So you say that you don't have a bank account, and so it means that you have cash, €1 million cash, right? Okay. I would put it differently. That this is, but it's a bit weak as an explanation. That if you want to measure the wealth, then you should consider also the properties. But we don't have information from the text. We on the rationale behind the metric. It's amounts owned, the metric. So if during an exam you have such a doubt, you ask, or you make a clear hypothesis. You write your hypothesis on the interpretation of this metric. However, I can say that it's a bit weak because the metric is amount owned. Okay. About possible discriminations, take care that I put in the questions, I repeated what are the subset of protected attributes towards which there could be a discrimination risk. There could be a discrimination. All indicators that are related to wealth and to socioeconomic conditions, they correlate with ethnic group for the reasons that we know in the US society. So any indicator you could have picked, any indicator that is related to amounts owned, for instance. Employment status might be also, I could accept. Then employment status could be also a proxy Well, in employment status could be a variable in which female perform worst because of, on average, most frequent interruptions of work. This was also acceptable in this context as an answer. And then length of credit history, this is linked, well linked to a measurement issue, is a systematic disadvantage for young people. Because if you are young, there is a cap, as I said, in the indicator. So you cannot reach the maximum points. The part on discrimination risk was here less relevant, only 2.5 points, because in the design of the exam, I thought that it was was easier and less important than measurement issues. Let's comment quickly what were the most frequent errors in this exam. Comments that were not in line with the name of the variable. As I said to your colleague in these questions, in this exam, you just add the name of the variable. You should stick to the name of the variable. So whatever you write that goes much beyond the name of the variable is difficult to be accepted. No explanations given. This is a common in many exams. Or too vague and general statements. For example, writing arbitrary thresholds is not acceptable. I have no explanation. There is a specific issue on the thresholds. Whatever is the reason behind those thresholds, we don't know. We cannot make any hypothesis about that. But the problem was that a small variation in the percentage through the thresholds would have caused a large, more than proportional variation in the points. This was the problem, not the arbitrariness of the thresholds. We don't know about. We have no information about that. Of course, you should not contest at the exam unless it is specified. I asked about discrimination risk. You should not say that variable, let's say, missed payments is not a good variable, so should not be there. No, this was not asked. So you have a set of variables. I asked to answer to find the measurement issues for each variable. And then so finding discrimination risk in the first question. No, the first question was about measurement issues. This was also a problem, a frequent problem. Discrimination issue, only one common error was quite easy and was okay, but identifying a non-protected attributes among the list given. So I gave you a list. You should stick to that list. In this case, I even identified what specific protected attributes were asked. In other cases, I might ask you a discrimination risk towards a protected attributes or a discrimination risk and stop. It is always implicit in this course. The list of attributes that I gave you from Article 21 of the European Charter of Human Rights. You have a list, and usually the common attributes, protected attributes, are the common ones: ethnic group, colors, gender, family status, etc. The fact that you are picking one of the questions that I got, the fact that you are a wealthy person or not, that is not a protected attribute. Being rich or not rich, this is not a protected attribute. It's a socioeconomic condition. Okay, questions so far? I will now I will quickly introduce the second exercise so that you can go ahead or make a break as you wish. You organize by yourself. And again, in about 30 minutes, 40, I will comment the solution. Let me take the text of exercise 2. This is more specific on recommendation risk. No measurement issues in this exam. The IT company Lockheed, based in the US, developed and runs online an online job platform that is used by US tech companies and American citizens to offer or find jobs, also using queries by keywords. Is Lockheed, it's like LinkedIn. And it's specific to US. The company is working to enhance the service with a recommendation algorithm to automatically advertise job offers to users that are deemed good candidates for that job. So the recommendation algorithm works to advertise a given vacancy. The algorithm will be trained on historical data on job applications for the last 5 years. There will be a training. The historical data is acquired from 3 US leading companies in the IT sector. So if I write leading companies, they should be large, very large companies in the IT sector. The deal between Lockheed and these 3 companies that will provide the historical data to make the training has been made with 3 constraints that are the following ones. First, the data will contain the list of applicants, anonymized, and the outcome of the hiring process, hired, not hired. This is the target variable. For the following job positions: software engineer, database administrator, software developer, computer network architect, information security analyst. So only for these professions, there will be data. For each applicant, the following information is available: education level, university degree, yes or no, list of skills extracted from the CV, current pay, a numerical value, 0 if currently unemployed. So this is the data, the requirements on the data that will go into that will be used as training data. So not the data that is already on the platform. The respect for the following constraints to avoid systematic discriminations of the recommendation. So there are some constraints. Inverse imbalance ratio higher than 0.25, higher or equal, where the inverse imbalance ratio is computed as the minimum between of the frequencies of the 2 classes, between female and male, and the maximum. So if you have a 20% female, 80% men, you make 20 divided by 80, and you get this index, that is inverse balance ratio. Ethnic group, at least 10% for the less represented group. And age, equal cardinality of age groups. We don't know which are the age groups, and but we know that for each group there should be the same cardinality, same numbers of instances. Oh, well, no, we know the age group. Sorry, I totally forgot this part. Consider that protected attributes are encoded gender and binary case, ethnic group, Caucasian, African American, Asian, or other, 4 levels, and age group 18, 25, 25, 60, 50, more than 50. Do you have questions on the text? The question is, as usual, I ask to answer briefly and to give a separate answer for each point. This is important because every year I find a unique answer where everything is mixed. And then it's up to me to decide what is belonging to answer to question 1 and what is belonging to question 2. I don't accept then critics on that. So if you want to be sure to be evaluated correctly, separate your answers. This is important. For which protected attributes or attributes there is still a risk of systematic discrimination despite the constraints placed. So despite the requirements that were put to avoid the systematic discrimination, is there still a risk for which attribute? Explain why. So this was 5 points. And then propose a specific improvement for mitigating one selected issues from the previous answer. Always explain the rationale for the suggestions and any persistent limitation, if any. So if the improvement is satisfactory or if you think that it will not be in any case satisfactory. Okay. So you can start trying to do it, or you can also make a break if you want. In about 30 minutes, we comment it. I uploaded a few minutes ago the solution that is already on the web portal, and I will quickly comment it here now. As a general comment, it was possible to take the maximum of this exam with writing very few lines, and because at least from my perception, this was a quite, not saying easy exam, but this is, how to say, you can consider this exam as a good exam in order that if you are not able to solve it at the end of this course, when you will redo the exercise, you might worry a little bit, because this is this was a quite affordable exam. Regarding the risk of discriminations, in the proposed solution, you will find 3 hypothetical risks of discriminations. The strongest one, and it was enough for the sake of the exam, is the discrimination about gender. This was required. An answer that didn't identify gender was not 100% right answer. First of all, it is written in the text that the sector is the IT sector in US, and I gave explicit job positions that will be in the training set. So we are speaking about the training set in this exam, because it is written that the algorithm will be trained on historical data on job applications of the last 5 years, acquired from US leading companies in the IT sector. So this also was a first indication that we are speaking about a sector that is dominated by male, white male. And I also wrote very technical positions: software engineer, database administrator, software developer, computer networks architect, information security analyst, in which there is an imbalance in the training data, and this requirement is not enough, because since it is higher or equal to 0.25, if you get a inverse imbalance ratio of 0.25, since you have only two categories, you can make several cases, but 0.25 is equivalent to have 20% female and 80% male in the training data of a sector in which that is already highly imbalanced by the prevalence of men. So you have a potential risk. So we are reasoning in probabilistic terms, in terms of risk, that recommendations will be skewed towards men because of prevalence of men in the sector and because the criterion that was set is not enough. To get an equal distribution, you should get a ER that is higher. For instance, 0.67, you get 40%, and 0.60%, so more, you get more equilibrium. Then you also have a quite strong proxy attribute that is current pay. Because of the gender pay gap that we analyzed, this might be higher for men. And if, and only if, the proxy attribute, this current pay, will correlate with the target variable, then you might have this risk. Do you understand this passage? Because this is important. So, if I'm saying that, as you know, we have a target variable that is hired or not hired, okay? We have an attribute that is current pay, that because of the general patterns that we have analyzed in the first part of the course, in the slide set of demographic disparities, we know that we can safely assume that this is correlated with gender, even if, so gender is tracked also in this, but even if it was not tracked, there is this correlation. But in order to get an effect on the recommendation, because the data, the training, the algorithm is trained, so you should have this link. So you have to make the hypothesis. If you indicate in your answer that there is a discrimination risk because of current pay is a proxy of gender, okay, that's fine. But under the hypothesis that current pay will be correlated, is an important factor for the target variable. Because in order that if the model will learn this correlation, then the recommendations will be skewed towards success factors of having been arid, that is current pay, and so also gender. This is important. If it's not clear, I will repeat. Yes, please.
What if my hypothesis is that correlation is negative?
Why?
Because I'm assuming that they look for people who have less current pay.
It's an assumption that is very vague and not related to the text. Cannot be accepted. We analyzed in the first part of the course some patterns, general patterns on inequality. So I assume that you can rely on them to make your explanations.
It's very dependent on the case. So I think in this case, if I am looking for someone to offer a job and I want to find someone who's paid less now.
Your hypothesis is not linked to any information given the text. If you look the text, there is nothing that could be revealed to. There is a recommendation that is based on data, on training data, on a training set with some characteristics. but it is not written anywhere that the recommendation is
Exactly, it's not written that it's negative, it's written that it's positive.
no, wait, but it's important. We analyzed during the course a clear pattern of inequality. You should use those patterns of inequalities. Your hypothesis is very weak. It's not accepted. It's not anchored to any element of the text. It's a recommendation algorithm for matching vacancies, job vacancies. You might have job vacancies are also usually linked to a pay. Okay, that is in the job description. I think that so is it clear why?
To be more cautious with the hypothesis.
Try to stick to the text and try to stick to the patterns of inequalities that I explained and that are recurring in many exams. If it was written that the company wants to optimize the money spent, or there is any indication for that, yes, then is acceptable. Otherwise, there are more stronger facts that can let us identify these proxy attributes and the balance between this is weaker as a possible explanation because again of prevalence of men in the IT education, we can hypothesize that certain skills are more pertinent to the job posting that are on IT, and so there might be also a risk of discrimination. Not saying that there is a discrimination in this exam, a risk of discrimination. It's a risk analysis. So again, under the hypothesis that skills will be a relevant factor for the target variable, we can say that this is correlated to the gender through education. This is a possibility. It's a bit weak, but I accepted as answer also. Other questions? Then we have ethnic group. Because of prevalence in North America of in the IT sector of white people, we might have that the requirement of 10% of the less represented group might not be enough because of the categories, because there are 1, 2, 3, 4 categories. So it doesn't mean having 10% of the less represented category that you counterbalance the majority of Caucasian. Then the less relevant, the less obvious was age. That I didn't count whether if people didn't indicate age was not an error. This is, I accepted that also age, because young candidates have younger candidates a lower education level. They are in the category 18 and 25. And if, again, if education will be relevant for the target variable, so you have also this you might also have this link. This is a risk analysis. It doesn't mean that the discrimination will occur, but you have to identify the elements of risk, of possible risk. You had a question?
Are foreigners coming to the US, the current pay is going to be very skewed, it's going to be not relative to the nation that they come from. It's an even stronger relation.
But you didn't put gender at all. So gender was important to be there. The training data is exactly is from the company. About improvement, it was enough to say to get a better gender balance, for example, 35% female, corresponding to an imbalance index ratio of 0.47. It's not enough, but it's an improvement. So this intervention might not counterbalance the effect of the proxy variable, but is still an improvement. So to raise up the minimum threshold of the inverse imbalance ratio. Most frequent errors fall in the same categories that we analyzed in the past in the other exams. Are there any questions? Okay. Now, last exercise for today. Quickly comment it, and then I leave it to do it. Predicting absenteeism at work. The managers of a large chain of supermarkets in Italy want to contrast the absenteeism at work of the company's cashiers. So only a specific occupation, the cashiers. They want to understand which factors are related to the most frequent absences. Given such a goal, they built a dataset merging the available information on the absences with the demographic data of the cashiers. The obtained dataset contains absences from the 1st September 2015 and the 1st September 2022. For each absence, the information in this list is available. Notice that the variable from A to D, from A to C are related to when the absence took place. So the day of the week from Monday to Friday, the month, 12 possible values, the season. For each absence, you have this track. And then it is merged with the demographic data of the person who made that absence. The distance from residence to work, a number of kilometers, the current salary, the service time in terms of number of years the person is at the company, at that specific company, education, 3 possible values, bachelor, master degree, or PhD, son, number of children, smoker, yes or no, the weight in kilograms, the age in centimeters, and the target variables, that is the number of hours of absence. This was taken for a public dataset that has exactly these variables was on Kaggle. It is on Kaggle. The goal is the same, predict absenteeism. The company signed a consultancy contract with a data scientist who is charged with the task of building a prediction model and giving advices on its strengths and limitations. So you want to, with this data, to predict have a prediction task. You are the data scientist who signed the consultancy contract, and you have to identify which measurement issues. You can include also model limitations, data collection issues. Do you report to the managers? You are asked to identify 2 issues in total, and with explanation. So each issue was worth 2 points. And then which risk of systematic discriminations towards a protected attribute do you identify? Only one, and explain why. Okay, try to do it. My suggestion, as usual, spend 10 minutes alone on the case, and then try to solve it in groups. In about 30 minutes, I will upload and comment the solution. I apologize for I forgot to record the first part of the explanation. I was saying that you don't have information on the year, so you cannot distinguish abscesses taking place in the same day of different years, and longer the duration also of the absence. I repeat, only for the recording purposes, please apologize, but so that people who is absent can listen, that the 2 previous measurement issues were the not tracking Saturday and Sunday, because a chain of supermarkets is reasonable to be expected to be open at least on Saturdays, at least, and the education level with only 3 possible values. Then I wrote that this exam was during right after pandemic, that years 2020 and 21 should be considered the particular years with a separate model because of COVID. This was accepted as an answer. Then we have that I also wrote that we might have very few data about people hired recently. Is a limitation, data collection limitation. And as I say, the year is not tracked. Let me check one thing. Okay, I have to make a correction because I said something that is needs to be corrected. As I said, I made a little bit of confusion, sorry. I said that we are not tracking the year, that's fine. And I also say that the database is organized by absence. Since I was focusing while commenting on variables ABC, I totally forgot that we have the target variable. That is the number of hours of absence. So I need to revert part of my explanation. That is, we are able to know the duration of the absence. We don't know the most unless we do some computation, but we don't know from how the data is organized the most frequent absences. There's someone who is not. I see some faces that are worried or is not clear. Let's try to rephrase. I hope it is clearer. If my target variable is the number of hours of absence, if this is the target variable, what can I predict? The number of hours of absence, the longest absences I can predict. Okay? Not the most frequent absences. This is totally different. No, it's still not clear. Can you see the difference? Target variable is the number of hours of the absence. If I train a model with such target variable, I can predict that that's basically the duration. I see some faces that say yes, some other faces that say no. How can you predict the most frequent absences with such a structure? Can you find a way? Or do you need some other restructuring of the database? The most frequent absences of a person for a given reason, you cannot with such structure of the data. You need to change. Yes, please. Yes, that's right. But with the current structure, you cannot. This is a limitation, a possible limitation that you could also write. So you understood, some others I see no. At the moment, I have no other ways in mind to explain it. Let's go on the other part of the question. That is something, if a better example with come in mind, I will tell, or I will update the solution. Okay, we have some proxies. The most important one is the current salary. It was by design. I put it there because of the gender pay gap. Then what happened? I had many answers at the exam pointing that age and weight are correlated to gender. That's true. I did not design the exam with that in mind, but I accepted it because well, I didn't want to penalize too much, and this appeared to be such a frequent answer that I assumed that this is common knowledge. So for this exam, I didn't plan to put it there, but I received so many answers that I accepted as valid answers, as proxies. I checked, and in fact, there is in the worldwide population, there is a clear correlation of weight and age with gender. So fair enough, I accepted it. Important thing that they are correlated with gender, but then they should be predictors of the target variables, as usual. You need the link with the predictor, with the hypothesis. You need to state the hypothesis. Under the hypothesis that there is this correlation, then you can explain a possible discrimination. There can be a possible discrimination. It's a risk. Might be low, high, but there is such risk. There is also another aspect that Kasher is a job that is usually made by women, usually. So I accepted also such reasoning, that there will be a large imbalance in the data of women, and so basically there can be also these aspects that there is an hypothesis to be made, that the hypothesis that the distribution of the absences will reflect such imbalance, so that given that there are more women, also that at least the same disproportion is in the absences. Because if you have a data set, if only men, the few men are absent, make absences, then of course any algorithm will learn that only men make absences. Only aspects related to men are important. So it's always important to underline the hypothesis. This is clear? Then I left a concerns about explanation about variable age, number of children. There is no rationale to say that this variable is correlated with women or with men. There is no rationale. What you can say is that since women are usually more care obligations, then this aspect is relevant for women, but it's not that number of children is correlated with women or with men. If a couple of persons have children, they both work in the supermarkets, number of children will be, let's say, 3 for both of them. It doesn't matter the gender. I think I said everything. Let's maybe check the most common errors. Okay, this was also something that was commented earlier, saying as a measurement issues, this variable is meaningless. So there were some answers saying there is no rationale of tracking weight or age. It doesn't matter. I asked you about measurement issues. So the variable is there. Demographic data is there. So if the question is about measurement issues, you should stick to the question. Or GDPR, fine, but this is not the part of the exam on GDPR. I didn't ask about general ethical issues, and then I could accept observations on whether it is legitimate to track this information. I asked about only about measurement issues. Okay. Then all the other categories of frequent errors are there. I will stop the recording, and I will. There are a few minutes, but if you want to make questions, I'll be here. Next week, we conclude theory.